Everyone, welcome. Again, my name is Jody Rogish. Welcome to our first Tuckahoe Talk for 2026. February 23rd, we're going to do another one probably in about 2 to 3 months or so. So stay tuned on the information for that. There are signups in the back, so do please register so you can get those updates. I'd like to thank, I don't know if there's anybody here from the library that's in the room, but I'd like to thank Tuckahoe Library for hosting us today. And then I want to introduce just a few people that are here from our team. Deputy Chief from Fire, Clavert is here. Ms. Rosemary Deemer from Planning. We have our Public Works Director, Mr. Terrell Hughes. Here, County Manager John Vitulkas, and thank you to the PR staff. Officer Phillips, thank you for being here, keeping us all safe and staying safe yourself, of course. Just one comment, the last 3 weeks were interesting, right? We had I want to hit this right off the bat, and Mr. Hughes from Public Works is going to talk a little bit more in detail, but folks, listen, this was a storm like, for those of us that have been here 30, 40 years, we haven't seen anything like this ice. So I do want to give a shout out to the Public Works crew, the plowmen and women that were out there, 12-hour shifts around the clock. They really did as best they could. They were doing great work. As you know, the primaries and the secondaries were completely cleared if you got out to that point. The neighborhoods obviously were not. We couldn't get to the neighborhoods fast enough. I think he'll talk a little bit more about the number of plows they damaged. And it was really challenging. Anybody that actually grabbed the shovel and tried to get the ice off of their own walk or driveway, you knew how challenging it was. So thank you to you and the crew, Mr. Hughes, for that. Thank you. So we did bring him in. So we're gonna talk about 3 things today, actually 4 things today. We're gonna hear from our fire chief, from our police chief. We're gonna hear from the planning staff on some of the comprehensive plan changes that are occurring. And we're gonna hear from Mr. Hughes a little bit. And then we'll open up for some questions. And so I think I'll answer a few questions that came in online before the meeting, and I think we have those. We'll answer some of those. I think a number of you have questions for myself. So with that, I wanted to again thank you. Listen, this really works well when we have 30 people in the audience, because you guys care enough to learn about what's going on in the government and to challenge me and to keep us going on the county side. So thank you all for being here today. And with that, we are going to start with I think we're going to start with our fire department. Deputy Chief, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. From Tuckahoe to join us here today at the Tuckahoe Library. I did not do a slide because generally everyone in the community loves the fire department, so I didn't have any real, bad news to help. I don't come up with crime stats and things like that. So we'll kind of make this more active, and I'll just give you some of the things that we're doing in the community to better Henrico. First of all, my name is Doug Clavert. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations, which oversees all of the fire stations in Henrico County. I was born and raised in Henrico. Completed school at Gayton Elementary. I went to formerly Bird Mellow School, which is Quiocsa now, and I am a graduate of Godwin High School. All of my siblings have graduated from Godwin High School, all my cousins, brothers, sisters, so I'm very familiar with Henrico County. My family still lives in Henrico County, so just to give you a little background. So for the Tuckahoe District, some of the stats that I have for you is, this is a good stat. Tuckahoe is actually, for the fire department, the slowest district. And what we mean is you have the least amount of calls for service in your area. So when it comes to EMS calls, we run about 8,100 calls in your area. That's looking at the maps, kind of just 9 where Quiocsa is. That's Regency Firehouse is one of the fire stations. 8 on Patterson. We also on the line is 10 at Horsepen and Broad. That's kind of on the line for us. But also 17 on Gaskins are the main ones, and also 22 actually is outside of the district, if you look at the districting lines, but they run into your Tuckahoe for a lot of the calls. Also, when we come to fire calls, that's like fire alarms, nuisance calls for fires, it's only about 1,600 calls, which is good, kind of down some. from looking at the numbers, but our medical numbers are going up. This year, with the help from Mr. Rogish, we did add a transport unit in the Tuckahoe district at Firehouse 8. That is a low acuity call transport unit. We call it medical transport technicians, and it still can transport folks, but it runs the low acuity call. So if you have like a minor injury, not necessarily don't have to, if you're not having breathing problems, you don't need chest compressions, you haven't falling over 10 feet, but just, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling well today. That unit to kind of check you out. We have 5 of them total in the county, and one of them is in Tuckahoe at Station 8. What that does is releases the ALS providers from being able to take the high acuity calls. So when we are getting the cardiac arrest, when we are getting the traumatic calls, vehicle accidents, and someone may be really hurt, that takes the pressure off of those units for us. I know one of the other things I want to talk about today is a lot of questions come up, and since been like the last talk, ice and roadways and us making this to you. So some of the things we did to prepare for the storm to make sure we could get to you is we do have our own set of snow plows on 3 of our vehicles. Rec and Parks also helped us with 3 snow plows. So we had 6 snow plows to get us where we needed to be. With so our transport units, we've transitioned, those are 4-wheel drive now. So they can get down your streets. Even on ice though, we still were getting stuck and having issues. We have chains for our fire trucks. We have on-spot chains, which is a button we press and it just shoots chains out as we roll over them. So we do have the capabilities to get to you. Also on all the fire trucks, we have shovels, sand, things like that. So we were getting a lot of calls that people were afraid that we wouldn't be able to get down their driveway. We wouldn't be able to get down their sidewalks. But I just want to assure you, we will get down the streets with the help of Public Works. A lot of times we're sitting in the same, matter of fact, the storm came in on a Sunday. Me and Mr. Hughes were in the same room. A fire truck got stuck at Gaskins. I forgot the cross street. And I was like, we have a ambulance stuck here. They put up their map. They're like, hey, we have a unit. I think it was like 15 seconds away. Got right there, pulled the unit out, sanded around it. And so that's how we communicate. So that we attempt to get down. We also use our 4-wheel drive SUVs if we have to get a patient from, if it's a hill or slippery, things like that. But we are advancing and keeping up with the new technologies with the support of the county manager and the board of supervisors. So that's why we do have 4-wheel drive ambulances, because we used to not have those. It wasn't a thing. We have the newest technologies and things like that. So we are able to respond and help you in those times of emergencies. Also, some of the things that we are doing in the community. This is the 2nd year we started a Girls on Fire camp. That's also a recruitment tool for us to get some of the students involved in public safety. It started as just a fire camp, but this year it'll be a police and fire camp. 2 days trying to hit middle school girls, and then the next 2 days will be for them to hit police, just to get them a career interest in trying to find out what it is public safety has to have. We're also currently running a recruitment. I'm here recruiting, so if you have any kids, grandkids, I'm just looking for a job. Henrico is one of the best places to work. So we are recruiting together police, fire, sheriffs, and 911. And what we're telling them is you don't have to select one of us. We just want you to come work for the county because it is a great place to work, live, and play. But other than that, if you have any questions for me, because again, I don't have any major stats, just that we come to bring to you, but open for any questions that you may have or questions about the fire service that I can answer for you. Yes, ma'am.
Catches on fire, which the reason I say that is when I was about 8, the fire department had come into my school, and it was like the next day or 2 days later, my 5-year-old sister was trying to blow out candles that were on the fireplace, and her hair caught on fire. And so I threw her down and did the stop, drop, and I rolled her in the rug, and that was the end of it. So I've asked my grandchildren, they've never had a fireman at their school, but they're only 5 and 7. So I just wondered if that is something the fire department does. And the second question is completely different. But when a person calls 911, does the fire department always come out, or does the rescue squad come out, or do you have to ask for one or the other?
So good thing is I can answer both of those. So the first one, our community risk reduction section handles the school program. The reason why they made that because the old program was 4th graders only. So last year, I used to be in CR. We changed the program. So we hit K through 5 the entire year, because what was happening is Gayton, a 4th grade teacher said, hey, I want to see a fire truck. Then a week later, a 3rd grade teacher says, I want to see a fire truck. And then the next week, the 1st grade teacher. So we're like, you know what? Hey, let's fix this for you. So now what we do is it's K through 5. Today we're coming to Tuckahoe Elementary. All the classrooms will come to the gym, and we set up a program for them. So we have a section where we're dressing and going over our equipment so they understand us. And this came from a long time ago. I don't know why somebody found out that kids or people were scared of firefighters when they dress up. So we still show the kids that we dress up. We have another station that goes over familiarity with like the stove, the oven, and things like that, what not to do. As far as touching, where if there's towels hanging on it, if the pot handles are turned backwards, that's another station. We have a station where you come out and we have a window prop that we have made. We teach them how to touch the windowsill, look out of the windowsill. We teach them how to get to their mailbox. And we also have a kid safety house where they get to go through. So it's about 4 or 5 stations, and we rotate every grade through that program for the day. The only bad part is if a child is sick or not at school that day, they do miss the program. But we have found more success with that program and hitting more than just the onesie twosies going at request of the teachers. For your second question, can you repeat that? Okay, I got you.
Okay,
And I'll add on to that. So one other station that we have added at the K through 5 program is 911. They have a cell phone that they bring to the program, and the kids actually get to dial 911 and talk to someone on the other side in class, so they understand that. And we have seen this past year, actually in somewhere off of Church Road, a kid's father fell into his campfire. The kid had just had the program the week before, called 911 and saved his dad's life. So it is successful, but how we determine, so based on when you call, it comes into the 911 center. Our fire department supplies fire trucks and transport units. So we're sending both no matter what. It just depends on the severity of the call. So if it's a high priority call, you're probably going to see a fire truck, a police car, and a transport unit. So one would say, well, why is a police car coming? Well, sometimes it's traffic control. Sometimes if it's could be a crime scene as well, and we get in there first, we hand it over to them. So you're going to get all of them just based on the call. And sometimes you're just going to get a fire truck. So if you have a leaking pipe, you're probably just going to get a fire truck. You're either an engine or a ladder truck. If it's a medical call, you might even get just a transport unit first. And then if those 2 folks that get off the transport unit need assistance, maybe lifting the patient out of the bed, or it's a larger house and they need help getting them out, then we'll add a fire truck to the call once they get there and assess. But generally, it just depends on the severity of the call. And being that Henrico supplies both, there are some of our counterparts that they don't have both, so they'll just send a fire truck and they don't know, and then they have to wait for someone else to bring a transport unit in. But Henrico supplies you with both. So it just depends on the call type. Yes, ma'am.
It's not ambulance, you called it a transport unit.
So
That's what we call an ambulance,
Yes,
right?
ma'am, ambulance, yes, ma'am. But sometimes, so the reason why I say a transport unit is because ambulance is a level of service. So ambulance in Henrico County is a BLS unit. There is not a paramedic on it. It's just two EMTBs. And then a fire medic unit is a ALS unit, which has a paramedic on it, so can give you more care. So yeah,
What is the thank you. Can you give us some guidance on what's the appropriate use of heating your home when the electric goes out, like in this past time when we were in the middle of a blizzard?
Yes. So generally, we tell folks to, in that sense, tell people to have blankets and things like that. Some people do, because my grandparents did it growing up, have kerosene heaters and things that they may use, or they'll run a generator to use one of the electric fans and things like that. If you are going to use an outside generator, just make sure it's not near the opening of your door or in your garage running, because CO will creep back into the home. But generally, we try to stay away from people using candles to light things. So if you do use battery operated things, but clearly some people don't have access to all battery operated or things like that. But we would say blankets and layer up. Some of the things you can do is closing some of the windows with coverings just to keep the heat in. But if it's a bright sunny day, which it wasn't the past few weeks, you could let some of the sunshine in, but we didn't have that. But being that it's 6 degrees, we recommend just using blankets and layering up. The less times you go in and out of your door helps them keeping the cool breeze in. Putting towels and things at the cracks of the door and the window seals is what we recommend, outside of using, trying to use some of those where you're transferring kerosene and different petroleums into a heater. Some people do have fireplaces where they don't use wood. We recommend not falling asleep with those running unless you have a wood stove that is a door closed, but some people still just want to put a couple logs in the fireplace. Make sure you do have the proper screen and everything up front to make sure it doesn't roll out. We also recommend not leaving that unattended so you don't have a fire. Also maintaining your chimney. Make sure you get an inspection and make sure it's getting clean, because this time of year we do get a lot of calls for chimney fires, and they can be costly because not getting them cleaned out, you can have a fire in the middle of the chimney, which will then cause it to smoke up the inside of your house. Yes, ma'am.
And they don't know their address. Can you trace them by the cell phone that they're using?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was wondering what the policy was on independent living, assisted living, and memory care facilities and fire drills. And the reason I'm asking is my sister is at a place on Parham Road near the bridge, the Barclay. And to my knowledge, she's been there since June of 2024. And to my knowledge, they've never had a fire drill. And when the fire alarm goes off, nobody does anything. You know, they don't even look out their doors. And also the decibel level of the fire drill is so loud that I think it's far, far above the decibel level that is required and is actually deafening.
All right. So first thing I'll tell you is after this, I'll meet with you in the back and discuss kind of some steps that I can help you so we can get more information. I'll give you my card. I'll also connect you with the fire marshal, and I will carry that information back. But number two, we do inspect all of the businesses in our area from our fire marshal's office. So annually, they should be having a fire drill to ensure the safety, that it's working, that the pull stations work, what their operations are, but not to go into depth in front of the whole crowd and take up all the time. I will get with you and discuss with you the steps that I can help you with to ensure that they do have that happening for you.
Seeing one more question, go ahead. How do you have your fire extinguishers?
Every 6 months. Generally, if you're just sitting it down in your garage, or if your snack cabinet or your pantry, just flip it upside down, just so the powder and stuff just doesn't settle at the bottom of it. Because a lot of times people sit it there for 2 or 3 years, never use it. So you just want to flip it upside down just to shake the powder up from stacking at the bottom, and then you can. They do. Generally, the manufacturer has a recommendation. It just depends on what brand you have, what size you have, but generally it's on the packaging, but they recommend just flipping it upside down. Generally, you wouldn't have to buy a new one every year or not. It should last you over 5 years if you're just taking it, flip it upside down, and then go from there.
Take one more.
Thank you. I got here late. You're the fire chief, am I correct?
Deputy Fire Chief. So just I have operations, so the fire stations.
Gotcha. Several things, I know you're probably already aware of it, but I keep reading about it over the years. Actually, here in Henrico, we had a little child, the age of that child, I think like 3 years old, that drowned near a pool at a wedding reception in the East End. And then just recently down the street from me, I heard a young kid fell into the pond and drowned. And I remember when I was growing up, my parents took me to the YMCA or whatever. They made sure I got swimming lessons and so on. Do y'all try and get memos out to all the parents to keep their kids away from bodies of water and stuff, And
Yes, sir. Safety message that we do go out, but the county as a whole, we have the Frank Thornton YMCA facility, which all second graders go through the program of learning how to swim. So we are aware of that. So the county has been proactive. That is a county facility in the East End off of Laburnum by Eastern Rec Center.
Yeah.
But it's also the Frank Thornton, YMCA, which is a separate YMCA and pool slated to help teach Henrico kids how to swim.
yeah, because at least the kids will know what to do if y'all are intervening. And the only thing I was going to say, sorry, Mr. Rogish, but was if I wanted an inspection on when I was a little kid, they came to my elementary school, and at that time you could make an appointment, and the fireman would come to your house and tell you what was wrong about your house. You could do this or put an alarm. We didn't have alarms at that time, battery powered, but do y'all ever come out to people's houses on appointment for elderly people and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, or anything like that? Or
Yes, sir. So we won't randomly just pop up and come, but if someone requests for us to come, we will come do a safety inspection for them, with the understanding that, because sometimes we get, my mom's house is X, Y, and Z. Can you come tell her or my dad to do X? We can't enforce in, just from state code. We can't enforce in your private home, but we sure can come give you some recommendations on better ways to declutter or change out this extension cord for a better one, or, hey, you should have a second smoke detector, just depending on when your house is built. So when I lived off Gayton Road, my house there had a smoke detector in the hallway that covered all upstairs. My parents' home in Twin Hickory now has a smoke detector in every bedroom because it's built under a different code. So we will come in and give you different information based on best practices, but we can't enforce anything in a private residence. I can get with you after too, if you would like us to come to your residence.
So thank you, Deputy Chief. We appreciate the fire department. You know that. Before we go on to the next, I just want to follow up on a couple things, but you talked about the Frank Thornton YMCA in Fairfield. We actually do it in the YMCA at Tuckahoe, as well as at the Swim Art Nova facility at the Regency Mall. So all second graders in Henrico County learn how to swim classes. So thank you to everybody for all of that. Thank you, sir. With that, we will now turn it over to the Chief of Police, Mr. English, Chief English. How you doing, sir? Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So just want to talk a little bit about what's going on crime-wise, talk about some issues that we're seeing across the county, but also want to just talk a little bit about what's going on in Tuckahoe. Last year, we had a very, very good year as it pertains to crime. Tuckahoe was down 14% overall reduction in crime. And Tuckahoe generally is always been fairly safe magisterial district. I will say the one thing we always deal with a lot in Tuckahoe is larcenies. Takes place, particularly thefts from cars. Again, we continue to do PSAs, tell people to lock their vehicles up. And I get it. You shouldn't have to, but that's just not the society we live in today. I get people that all the time say, well, Chief, my car is parked in my driveway. Okay, I get it. Your car should, you should be able to have your car unlocked in your driveway. You really should. But that's not what we experience. And so I always tell people, don't make it easy for people to steal things out of your car. A lot of times we see people that leave items such as laptops laying in the front seat. We even have weapons stolen, firearms stolen out of cars. And, that's the last thing we want. And some people say, well, my car was locked. My gun was in my car. It's locked. It's secure. Technically, you could say it's secure, but it's more secure in your residence with you locked up. So we just try to reiterate that. And so I would say, for overall Tuckahoe, we had a really good year, and that's always our goal each and every year is try to mitigate crime, bring crime down. Each and every magisterial district, that's what we strive to do. Last year, we talk about violent crime. Tuckahoe, we didn't experience a lot of violent crime in Tuckahoe last year. And so we got to make sure we're trying to maintain that level of security for our residents here in Tuckahoe. Overall, crime-wise, last year we had a phenomenal year. Homicides, as you all well may know, we only had 3 homicides in Henrico. And that's 3 too many. But I will say, preventing people from killing one another is one of the most difficult things for a police division to do. Because if somebody is really, excuse my French, hell-bent on killing someone, that's what they're going to do. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure, one, that we're trying to be in the right place, to be visible, to prevent those things. And so what we try to do is really concentrate on those areas where we see a higher propensity for gun violence to taking place in Henrico County. And so the more visible we can be in those areas and using technology to make sure we're making arrests on those individuals that have a propensity to impart gun violence on our citizens. That's what we try to do, and so those are some of the things that we're seeing moving forward. That we're going to have a difficult time doing is just trying to make sure we continue to try to push crime down overall as an agency. The other thing I will point out, I would ask you all, what do you think I get the most complaints about? Thank you, Jody. Speeding, I get that all the time. You get it, I get it. I get it all the time. I will have citizens that will send me a video, say, Chief, look at this. They're recording it as they're driving. I don't know, but they'll send me a video of something that's going on, and we're like, or somebody ran a red light. They'll send me a video. Look at this, Chief. They just ran a red light. I get it. I had a young lady at one of my window meetings that said, Chief, when are you going to stop people from speeding? And my response to her was, never. I'm not saying that just to be callous. I'm just saying, understand how many cars are out on the roadway. Understand how many red lights are out there in Henrico County. Understand that we could have 1,000 police officers, and you're never going to stop people from speeding. Now, what we can do is we can concentrate on certain areas and we can mitigate those things. We can issue tickets, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stop a speeding issue. But we can enforce those things. And so we do. We get calls from citizens saying, Chief, we got some speeding going on. We can put out an equipment to try to gauge what the speeding problem is, when it's occurring, those type of things, and we can go out and we do enforcement. And we do that a lot in a lot of locations throughout the county. But I always just try to get citizens to understand that we are dealing with a county that's 245 square miles, a lot of roadways, a lot of lights, a lot of vehicles. And I get what people are saying. Believe me, when I'm off in my personal vehicle, you see a lot. As a normal citizen, I see a lot. I see the speeding as well as y'all do. And I have the same thing as y'all. I say the same thing. So where's my cops when I need them? I do. I see it. But I also understand that there's a lot more than what we do than just sitting there looking at speeders, because we're responding for calls for service. We're going with the fire department on calls. Those things are occurring. So I understand that. So I just always say, just kind of keep those things in mind when you're asking about speeding and why we're not issuing tickets, because we issue a lot of tickets for speeding. But that's not necessarily mean the problem is going to go away. That just means those individuals are going to be punished for breaking the law. The other thing is you see all the time, you see people with cell phones in their hand. That's constant. You go to any stoplight right now and stop, and you look around you, everybody has a cell phone in their hand. Now, again, when they established that law, they expected localities to enforce that. I could tell you, how can you do that with everything that's going on? There has to be other mechanisms that take place in order for us to do that. And there are things you can do in the cars. The manufacturers can do things to stop you from calling. There's also a lot of things you can do other than just the enforcement piece of those. So those are some of the things we're seeing going forward. Those are some of the things we got to continue to work on to make our county better. So I just wanted to come here, just kind of give you a brief overview of what we're dealing with. And I do think we're going to have a good year. We're off to a great start already in 26. As far as mitigating crime, it's still going down. We're down 23% thus far. I know it's only a month and a half or almost a little over a month and a half now, but it's off to a great start. And that's something we're looking forward to. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about people having cell phones, and I have a big issue with this, and I've left you messages. So the issue is that I stand on the edge of the road. I am not in the road, and I do hitchhike because I do not own a car, can't afford one. And so I meet some very nice people. I've actually hitchhiked over 2,000 times without a scratch on me. Nobody lays a finger on me. So my issue is that people call and complain while they're driving. And so they don't know they're violating two laws, essentially. They're calling, it's not an emergency. They call 911. This is not an emergency. They often tell the police, because police show up and they tell me, they call and they say, a senile old lady is out there. I get this constantly. I'm not senile yet. It has never occurred in my bloodline on either side of my family. And I can trace back 7 generations on ancestry.com. So I don't expect to be senile. I do expect maybe my body will fall apart, but not my brain. So what I have the issue with is that people think they're doing me a favor. They think they're upset about it because they don't like the sign of poverty. It looks like poverty if somebody's hitchhiking. Oh my goodness, we can't have poverty in Henrico County. So I just wish everybody here would take a look at their own heads, because I see a lot of gray hair here and white hair. And if you're calling on a cell phone, you're not, and sometimes they stop. You can't stop in a lane of traffic. You can't use your cell phone while you're driving. And thirdly, you can't call 911 when it's not an emergency. Me hitchhiking is not an emergency. I'm not in the road. And I've left you messages about this. And on your answering machine, the first thing you say is that you'll call me back. You have never done that. So you have broken your rules. I've called you for years.
What's your name, man?
You know my name. Tell me what my name is.
I don't.
You do. I'm Miss Hamilton.
Oh, gotcha.
There you go.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And I make the kind of money that Batokas makes. He's getting $1,000 a day. I've never made that kind of money.
So
This year, y'all got an 8% raise. Does everybody know this?
So to your point, you are right about people calling about issues that are not an emergency. And so we actually implemented a call reduction program. I don't know if y'all remember this, probably about a year and a half ago, where we were trying to get people not to call 911 and use 911 for a purpose that's, because the last thing we want is our officers try to go and encounter someone. They're not doing anything wrong. And so the less interaction we can have with individuals that are actually abiding by the law and it's not a law enforcement matter, I don't want my folks to be engaged in that. So to your point, you are exactly right. So those that are using their phones for that purpose are not using it correctly. And again, to your point, they shouldn't be using their phone dialing while they're driving anyway. But it's a tough cookie for us to crack to try to engage with individuals and really enforce that, because it's so many times it's happening all across the county. Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. Yep. So, please, ma'am, I don't mean this in any disrespect, but I hear that sentiment all the time. They say to me, people always say, "I'm just waiting for somebody to get killed." I get it in my neighborhood. I get the same thing in my neighborhood, and I've lived in my neighborhood for over 30 years, and I hear the same sentiment sometimes from my neighbors. And what I say is that, again, you're never going to stop people from speeding. And again, we can put some mechanisms there in order to, like we have tried, in order to get people to slow down. Because I will say, when people do see their speed, a lot of times they will pump the gas because they'll pump the brakes rather because they think somebody's going to get, a ticket or it's going to get captured on the camera, what have you. So there are mechanisms to help people slow down. Speed bumps are only used in locations where the speed limit is it's 25 or less. 25 or less, and so it can't. It has to be the right mechanism. So I will say, even in my neighborhood, where the road I live off of, they just put a roundabout in my neighborhood. But again, I hear you groan, but people are complaining, and so I get it. It slows people down. I never saw, even in my neighborhood, as being a speed issue. Was there occasionally a car that went down 25-mile-an-hour zone and was going 45? Did I ever see that? Yes, I did. But on a regular basis, I never really saw that. So I would get people calling me and say, man, I saw a car to go 40. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a speed issue. That means you had a car that was doing something they shouldn't be doing. If you're seeing it regularly, you got a speed issue. But again, I would think that would be something we'd have to put some of our tools out there to kind of gauge what is the level that we're seeing. So when people say, well, there's 25 miles over, I see people going 35 all the time. Yeah, they're breaking the law, but is it actually a speed issue that's going to create an issue, create something greater? Now, to your point, you may be spot on. It could be something that we need to look at, that maybe we can put some mechanisms in place to try to slow some folks down. But again, just keep that in mind. That is something I hear all the time. People say, well, I'm just waiting for the accident to occur. I could pretty much say that about any neighborhood in Henrico County. I'm just being honest. I could.
In that location, we did just put the sign
up, yeah.
Great. And we can get some police.
And are you seeing it at a certain time, or is it just consistent? I got you. Okay.
We can work out. We need. Go ahead, Chief.
Oh, you're gonna put it on me? Okay. I don't know who's hand went up first. There's a lot of hands up.
We got about 5 minutes for questions on the.
I want to know how lucrative are those lights you have put up at different places? Cameras, the cameras that you have.
Any cameras?
Like the one in New Kent on 64.
Yes, and if they are helpful, what?
So we yeah, I know. So we currently don't have speed cameras in Henrico County. We currently don't have. Yeah, I get it. Those are the people that I really get concerned about, is the people that are switching back and forth. Though that's where it really gets reckless. And again, to your point, I do see it it's normally when I'm in my personal vehicle, I see it. But that is something that, if it's happening in a particular area and it's something you feel like we need to be addressed or so have somebody come out and take a look at that, it's something we can. But again, that is probably happening across the county, depending on the roadways that you're traveling. Right.
The other thing is, it's my understanding from something I read that maybe sometime in the future, statewide cameras are going to be required for school districts? Is there? I know Richmond has them now.
Oh, you're talking, yeah, for speed cameras. Yeah.
Yes.
So that is something definitely we're trying to look at in terms of our schools, because one of the things we do see a lot of is the speeding in school zones. And so when you got a lot of kids involved around those type of locations, that is something that we're looking at trying to implement to try to slow that down. So they have been very beneficial, out of my understanding, in the city. And so we've been in conversation with those, been in conversations with several localities across the state that utilize those speed cameras in those areas. And so it's something we're definitely looking at.
But right now, it's not going to be a requirement. It's
not that I'm aware of, not as a requirement.
okay. I was just kind of curious, especially like I said, I'm aware that Richmond City has them in their schools and so forth. And, you know, unsolicited, but I just read an article right before I came over here about how they're taking cameras out of certain cities because people have complained about them being invasive and different things. So, you know, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I just want to commend the police department for working with Henrico Mental Health and training officers in the mental health field and the level of cooperation that y'all have. And I hope that y'all continue to do that because I think that's very important.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, ma'am. And as you know, as you're well aware, that is one of the larger calls that we go on each and every day. It's a huge volume for us. And so it's imperative that our folks know how to respond and know how to work collaboratively with our partners to respond to those type of calls. It's not something that's going away. Statewide, we've had many conversations statewide about this issue and how we can better service those individuals. And I'm not saying that, you know, having police in every situation is the right thing. But again, when we have to respond, it's imperative our folks are very well trained and know how to interact. So I do commend our folks because we deal with it a lot. And I will agree with you that we do a tremendous job in that area.
I think it was the sheriff's deputies stopping every place where there was an unhoused person in median and making contact with them and making sure like they were going to be going somewhere safe right before the storm hit. Right. I thought that was excellent. I think, you know, when something that's once in a lifetime hits and there's no playbook for that, that's really when you see what sort of leadership you have, where you have people thinking outside of the box about who needs help, where you have people looking at how are we going to get our ambulances and our fire, you know, to send a plow with the ambulance. That's not something I would ever have thought of. I thought that was really good work.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, and again, that is a county issue. I mean, that's how we operate as a county. We have situations like that are arising. Department heads meet on a regular basis, daily, multiple times a day, just to make sure we have the resources, seeing what individuals need in those communities, and we come together as a team and we really get it done. I would just say that's how the county works, and so I would say you are living in a very, very good county in Henrico County. And again, you're talking about somebody that's been in several different divisions. This is not my first police department. I've been in several of the police departments. You know, I've worked several different places. And I will say Henrico runs very, very well compared to some other localities I've been a part of.
Okay, well, then, I saw two hands. Yeah, go ahead, real quick.
Everybody, I don't need that. You can hear me.
We need it.
Huh?
We need it for a lot.
Oh, that's all right. So in any event, I just came back from North Carolina, came into Virginia, right? Come up 95 and there's an accident on 95. So I get off in Chester. Okay. 288, 10, 150, up in here to Henrico. Okay. Everybody's driving in the left lane. Okay. So the lane changers are me. Because you got 9 people in the left lane and we're all trying to pass on the right. So I would just share with you, if you would give this guy the authority to come in there and just flash the lights at these people, get them to move over. Even your Henrico people follow these guys in the left lane. Guy going 40 and a 45, or maybe 55 and a 6, maybe, but he's in the left lane. Cop's behind him. I'm behind the cop. We're all sitting there for 20 minutes. Just tell these people, and I will just share with you, I love to drive, but you guys stay out of each other's way.
What you're describing to me, though, is not the lane changer I'm talking about. Yeah. That's not the lane changer I'm talking about. I get what you're saying, because that does happen. I don't know. I've seen the weaver that's the speed weaver. Not those folks you're talking. I get what you're saying, because I've been in that left lane behind those folks too. So I understand what you're saying. Well, this is what I always say about that though. Lights, be careful with that, because we got crazy people out here. Flashing your lights at people sometimes creates more of an issue than what you realize. People just, you don't know what people have in you. Right. I got you.
Okay, one more quick question for the chief. We have to move on, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Rogish. Thank you, Chief, for your service to the county. I appreciate it. I'm completely opposed to speed cameras, although I'm for strict law enforcement of the speed limit and stuff. I just think it's too big brother. So please, whatever you do with the General Assembly, and please, and I tell you that too, Mr. Rogish. I do want our kids protected around the schools, but I don't like the idea I read about when I have to work in the city. And if I did go over the speed limit, some private company in Silicon Valley is, some in between. So anyway, there's that whole thing. I hate the idea of it. I just want to know how you're doing with staffing, because remember you had issued a new policy where we're going to have to do a hierarchy of calls and so on. And I was hoping to talk to you before you left today about a situation I came across, if you had time. And that's all I wanted to say.
So great point. We are starting to turn the corner in terms of staffing. I will tell people we're still 61 officers down, sworn. But out of a 693 complement, while it hurts a little bit, we still get it done. And that's commending the men and women that work in the division. We still get it done. And then we're starting to turn the corner, because we're starting to see applications go up, and we're starting to see that number go up. And so we're starting to see our recruit classes, the numbers elevate a little bit. So I'm starting to see that. Hopefully there's no other major turn in law enforcement that makes people hesitant about coming into the business, because we know that happens. But I think, within the next 18 months, we'll start to see that number very dwindle to a very, very low level. So great question. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. I think they want you to write more tickets. So, but thank you, Chief, for being out here today. We really appreciate it. And for everything that you, Officer Phillips, and the entire force does. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, and again, we'll have some time at the very end. I know we're going to get to some other topics, but I still have two speakers left for you in the next 20 minutes. So we're going to turn to Ms. Deemer from Planning. Come on up, Rosemary, County Planner. We're going to talk about county planning. So just briefly, well, she'll go into all the details on it, but one of the major things that we do as Board of Supervisors is land use, right? Where does a business go? Where does housing go? What type of housing goes there? And every 20, 30, it's a plan that's coming up every 30 years, 20 years, we go through a process to revalidate that plan. So with that, Ms. Deemer from County Planning, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. I am pleased to be here, especially because Tuckahoe is my magisterial district. So as Supervisor Rogish indicated, I'm here to talk about the comprehensive plan. Some people may have heard it called the general plan, the land use plan. It is not the strategic plan. This deals specifically with land use in the county. And state code requires that all localities in Virginia have a comprehensive plan. They don't need to have a zoning ordinance, but they need to have a comprehensive plan. And as we said, there is a 20-year planning horizon. So our current plan is Vision 2026. we'll be looking at Henrico Next 2045. Right. It's a little bit difficult planning that far in the future, and we do the best that we can. So we began the planning process in 2021 as we were making our way out of COVID. We created a website as a place for all things related to the project. We conducted a resident survey as well as a recreation and park survey. And then we held a community visioning session to find out what issues were important to, whoops, I apologize. I thought I was. To identify what issues were important to the community. Okay, so when we did the survey, we asked a series of questions. One of the questions was, you could choose other places to live. Why do you choose to live in Henrico? So the one on the left indicates that 48% of all respondents indicated that it was because of the high quality of life, which includes the schools, the recreation and parks, the quality of the built environment. And then we also asked, which is the figure on the right, as we look to the next 20 years, where do you want the county to grow in your magisterial district? And 47% indicated that they preferred growth to occur in already developed areas. 29% indicated no new growth, but they acknowledge that it can't be stopped. Now, we actually were able to break that information down by magisterial district. And when reviewing the response, indicating that they choose to live in Henrico because of the quality of life, 68% of Tuckahoe residents indicated that was their choice. And then regarding growth, 56% wanted growth to occur in already developed areas. So we have 5 phases to our plan. We've obviously finished phase 1. We have completed phase 2, which in order to understand how to plan for the future, you need to know what's existing now, what's happened, what's existing now. And so as part of the plan update process, staff and our consultants conducted an analysis of certain county conditions to include transportation, socio-demographics, recreation and parks, housing and employment, and then the built and natural environment. I'm going to just click through these slides quickly, but what I'm showing you here is population density of Henrico County from 1960 to 2020. And you'll but it's looking like now. And you'll notice that most of the growth that is occurring is adjacent initially to the city of Richmond. So when I left, I came to VCU for graduate school, and I left in 1990. And then I came back in 2005. And one of the things I noticed was, as I was driving to a friend's out in Goochland, I had to ask them, what was our Short Pump Town Center? So, okay, here's the last 2. Okay, so once we reach 2020, you can see that the persons per acreage have gone from 0.75 to 2.14. And that is, you know, a substantial increase compared to New York City, Washington, D.C. These numbers are not anywhere near the numbers that they have there, but it is important to understand. So as far as our next phase was to evaluate the growth alternatives. So now we know how the county has been growing, and we have an estimate of how we continue to grow. So we need to then figure out where are there places left to grow. To give you some perspective, the 2024 county population was 353,000 people. We grow approximately 1% a year. So we need to be looking for housing for approximately 3,500 people a year. The county's not out there recruiting and, putting out messages, come live in Henrico. People hear about it and they come. We can't put a moat around the county. We can't put a dome around to stop people moving in. People come because based on the surveys, they like the quality of life. And that's what they want as well. So we have a challenge because we know that we're growing at this rate and we have to find places for people to live. This are side-by-sides of future land uses. So we know how the land is currently used. We know how the county recommends it be used up until 2026. So now our question is, if property is going to change from what it is today to something else in the future, what should that future growth be? What should that land use be? So I've tried to do my best of getting just the Tuckahoe district so that you can see the one on the left is our current 2026 future land use map. And the various colors, yellows, peaches, tans, those are usually residential colors. Reds are commercial, pinks are office, and then browns are multifamily. But you'll notice that most of the Tuckahoe district has residential components to it. That's the largest component. And you'll see on the 2045, and it's a little bit hard to see, but there are a few areas that are highlighted with black dots. Those are the areas in Tuckahoe we're recommending change. And usually it's because to catch up with either the county bought some property and now it needs to be designated government or perhaps recreation and open space like the property at Patterson and Mayberry. But overall, looking at the entire county, there is only 10% of the county looking at land use changes. So we're not making big suggestions on how to change the land uses, but what we are doing is we are trying to encourage infill and redevelopment along certain corridors. So you might see a couple little blacked out areas around Patterson Avenue. So areas that already have utilities that could or that have maybe shopping centers that are not quite as filled as they need to be. We're encouraging the redevelopment of this as opposed to, let's say, just green space that hasn't been touched. So phase 4 is kind of where we're at now. We took our proposed changes out to the citizenry, and I guess it was the spring of last high schools in this instance, and we had our roll of land December, and we could find your address. We could identify what you're currently designated to be in the future land use and what we're proposing. And most people said there were no changes, whether it was to their residences, to where they work, because we're trying to focus on, into infill. So in addition to just land use, we are covering other topics. We're required to cover land use, environmental, transportation, housing, broadband, things like that. This is the current draft 2045 proposed land use. And you'll see the far section on the bottom, that's the Tuckahoe district. We really don't have a lot of changes between 2026 and this plan. What we did change after we went out in April and May, we heard people, there was an opportunity, people could fill out a survey, they could drop pins on an interactive map and give us ideas about what, they thought development should or shouldn't be like in the future. And what we heard from a lot of people via the resident survey, via our visioning sessions, was people are interested in protecting the environment more. So the area that is east of 295 has now been designated what we're calling PARC, Park, Prime Agriculture Rural Conservation. So that is the area around the blue, the far eastern part of the county, everything south of there to the east of I-295. There's very limited resources, water and sewer out there. So we're thinking, why have water and sewer out there? Because that's only going to encourage more growth. So one of the things that we're proposing is that the development, which currently allows 1 unit per acre, would change to 1 unit per 7 acres. So we'll be taking this out. We've had it out and available for people to comment, but we'll continue to bring it out and see how people feel about that particular idea. This is our major thoroughfare plan. Mr. Hughes is very familiar with it. So this is almost the 2026 plan. The idea is the major thoroughfare plan is to identify roads that what their functional capacity is, how wide the road should be in the future. And then we should also be identifying whether or not we need new roads or whether we need to take any roads that originally were proposed in the 2026 version off the map because we didn't see the development that we expected. So this is yet another component of the plan. The final phase is the adoption and implementation. We're currently between phase 4 and phase 5. These are the major topics or themes of the plan: key planning influences and community vision, the environment, safe and connected spaces is our transportation chapter, managed and sustainable growth will be our land use chapter, as well as public utilities. High quality livable places will address community character and recreation and parks. And then we'll have an implementation section, which basically spells out, because the planning department cannot do all the things that the plan recommends. So we'll be identifying the various departments that either will take charge of a certain item or who we need to work with to get some of these things accomplished. Just to wrap up, as I said, we're currently working of the information. Following that, we'll then schedule, excuse me, community meetings across the county where people will be invited to look at the draft chapters, look at any maps that we might be providing, asking questions, again, offering comments. And then once those are wrapped up, we have an opportunity to review those comments, see if we need to make any changes. Then we'll schedule the comprehensive plan for public hearings. And so that would go again before the Planning Commission. This year, probably early to midsummer. And the adoption will happen this year because 26 will be over. And so we need to have our new plan. But I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize it gets so into the county's topics, but This does really concern me. I've been here my whole life, and I've watched. I enjoyed your first part of the presentation because I was in Western Henrico County. I was here in the 1970s, and you're right, it was all woods out where I was. And if it were up to me, ideally, I would have nothing built around me. I guess you probably hear that, no density. And I know that wages and employers really drive that. I don't have a, PhD in this kind of stuff, and you probably know a lot more about it than I do. But as a citizen, I would say, I guess, how do y'all balance? I understand. I've talked to a friend of mine about it. He said, well, the county has to worry about inflation. They have to continue to meet the interest payments on the bonds they've issued, and they have to attract newer generations of workers and so on. And it gets real confusing to me. But all I can say to you is, I just would prefer us to balance, if we had to cut services, obviously not essential services. I would prefer to have it look more rural instead of constantly trying to bring in more density and more people. I would rather them spread out into Hanover and Goochland.
And I appreciate that. I just have to say, the county isn't, like, economic development is out there trying to get employment opportunities to come to the county. They're not out there. There's not any particular division that goes out there and puts out ads in Northern Virginia that says, move. They don't do that. People choose to come here and have to accept that growth is, people don't want to see it. But we can't stop it. We can't just say absolutely no more rezonings, no more development. So we do hear you. And one of the suggestions is that PARC, which would allow areas that haven't been developed yet to stay in that function, because as you saw, most of the West End and part of the central part of the county.
That was towards, that's out in the eastern part of our county, right? Where it's going to be more left rural looking. But I know this sounds just to be radical, just to get to, so that I can understand the point more. Not that I would suggest doing it, but if we made it less attractive for citizens around the country to come to Henrico, because we told, if we just made it less hospitable,
that's a perfect segue into our Department of Public Works. If you can not fill the potholes, that would make people not move here, sir. Okay. No, I do want to respect everyone's time, and so because we'll have some questions at the very end as well. So I want to bring up our Department of. First of all, thank you, Ms. Deemer. Folks, the land use is really, really important. And so please take some flyers and handouts in the back on the land use, on the comprehensive plan, because that is what we deal with. We say this is a government property, that's a business, that's housing, et cetera. If you don't want that to change, we need to hear from you. They need to hear from you so that we're not adding things that you don't want. So with that, I'm promising to get everybody out of here by 2:30 at the latest. I want the Director for our Public Works Department to talk a little bit about the ice storm, because I know some folks might have some questions with him as well. So, and I was kidding. Please do fill the potholes.
We'll do. Yeah, and that's actually what we're actively doing right now. We're actually driving around, looking and assessing a lot of the damage that has been done to a lot of the roads. So we're seeing a lot of the impacts from the freeze thaw, and currently working through that. So if you see a pothole, feel free to report it. But we're driving around. We've got a number of crews. That's pretty much what we're working on. Thankfully, we didn't get too much snow last night, so that didn't distract us. But yeah, I'm Terrell Hughes, the Director of Public Works for Henrico County. So for those that don't know, Henrico County, we're unique. We're one of 2 counties in Virginia that maintain our own road, our secondary road system. So VDOT still maintains the primary, so like the highways, as well as like Broad Street, Patterson, those are still maintained by VDOT. But outside of those primary roads, in Henrico County, we maintain the rest of them. So we currently have 3,600 miles of roadway in the county. It makes us the 3rd largest road system. Virginia DOT, #1 by far, because they have pretty much every other county, Hanover, Goochland, pretty much any road in those are Chesterfield, that's VDOT. But we're second, as far as localities, only behind Virginia Beach. So, and we're actually really close to passing Virginia Beach in terms of lane miles. So we're one of the bigger systems. So out of that, we are responsible for snow removal as well. So I'll just kind of walk through. So that week of the storm, we were going back a number of weeks now, but we saw some of the initial forecasts. So that was actually, I think, a holiday weekend. We were working Monday, starting to get ready when we saw initial forecast for in like the 18, 20 inches of snow. We knew that was going to be a big one. So we called in pretty much our full response. So we have 3 levels of response. Our first level of response is we handle it exclusively with our road maintenance crew. So that's our division of road maintenance. Our second level of response, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually have a number of other employees in public works that they don't operate a dump truck on a regular basis, but they have CDLs to operate the dump trucks. So that's our second level of response, which increases the number of resources we have to work. And then our third level of response essentially is to bring in contractors. And then we kind of have a higher tier of contractor that has heavy equipment. So essentially that Monday, we pretty much already called in every resource we had because we knew it was going to be a bigger storm, which also meant we were moving the spreader boxes, the salt spreader boxes, getting all of our equipment, making sure that our sand was ready to go. Because we were also hearing forecasts of ice. So the forecast kind of shifted a few times. We had a number of calls with Dominion. We did hear the forecast, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, we saw a lower number from a snow standpoint, but then we started getting the reports of the freezing rain. And that's when we were having conversations with Dominion to prepare for catastrophic power outages. And they were looking at anywhere between 50,000 plus customers, which, there's 100,000 or so customers in the county. So that would have been pretty catastrophic, plus extremely low temperatures following the event. So we also needed to be ready for a tree event. So when you're hearing ice, it's not just the ice that we also have to deal with from a public works standpoint. We also need to make sure the roads are clear for passing. So we work in those instances, we would work really closely with like our fire, EMS, police to make sure they can get to respond to scenes, as well as Dominion to make sure that their crews can work. If you've seen some of the previous tree events, if you watch the news, you'll see Henrico, a lot of times we have lower power outage numbers, and that's usually because we work really closely with Dominion to make sure they can actually get to the places they need to get to. If they have to cut the trees to get to where the power outage is, then that slows their response time down. So those are some of the things that we were prepared to work through for the event. Actually, starting that Friday, that's when our crews went to the 24-hour, because we heard initial reports where it could happen Friday. Snow ended up coming in on Saturday, but we were pretty much ready to go, had all of our contractors, had all of our staff in, and we worked our entire team in 2 shifts, 2 12-hour shifts, pretty much until the event was over. And so total, if you're looking at staff, we had about 220 people from Public Works that were working the event. With our contractors, we were over 300. We had about 125 pieces of equipment. So about half of that was county equipment, and then a lot of the rest of it was contractors. We had about 20 to 25 pieces of heavy equipment. So that's I call it the front end loader, the big bucket, or the motor grader, which is kind of had the big scraper. And the reason I mentioned that is because once we got to the ice, that was pretty much the only equipment that could do anything with the ice. But we were pretty active during the storm. We had a pretty strategic game plan because we didn't know when the freezing rain was going to hit. And, you guys know, thankfully we didn't get as much freezing rain, which meant we didn't have a whole lot of power outages. When I was in the EOC, I think I was looking at we had a Dominion power outage tracker, and I think the highest we ever got was 10. So thankfully, with those really freezing temperatures, and it was back to zero within a few hours, they were able to restore. So we didn't have the mass power outages, which was one of the things we were fortunate for. We also didn't get a lot of the freezing rain. But I was looking out the window pretty much the entire event, and it started off as snow, and then I had 2 trees that I was looking at. There was a tree that had no leaves on it, and there was more of a pine tree. And typically when you get snow, the snow sticks in the pine tree, and then the freezing rain was actually going to stick on the branches, and didn't see either happening. And that's because we got hours of sleet, which technically is ice. And so we moved as fast as we could. Give credit to the state as well with the main roads, Broad Street. We were able to take care of roads like Parham, for example, Gaskins. A lot of those major roads were covered because we were actively handling during the event. And by the time we got to the end of the day, Monday, the temperature started to drop. And that's when we started running into some issues. Pretty much everything that we weren't able to, get up started to turn into, I guess, snowcrete as VDOT would call it. And we were starting to have problems with our equipment. I was starting to get calls from some of our folks that we were really not able to get through the stuff. Any of the F-250 pickup trucks that we had were pretty much ineffective. Everything was just too heavy. And then our dump trucks, what was happening is the blades were starting to skip and just jump. And there's a cutting blade on the bottom. We were seeing some of those were starting to break. We were having issues with the hydraulic hoses that control the plows because just the ice had gotten that thick. Actually, I had conversations with VDOT because they're a bigger agency. I was trying to figure out what they were doing, and they actually just stopped. They shut their night equipment down, and we're picking it up for the next day. So, but we kept going. So we knew we needed to kind of refocus because we weren't seeing the fast progress that we were earlier. So what ended up happening most of that week, we ended up really focusing more on working closely with 911 on their calls, supporting them, as well as opening up neighborhood streets. So if you tried to get out of your neighborhood, maybe around Monday, you might have seen a windrow, the big plow pile, and that was actually blocking people into the intersection. So we ended up, and VDOT actually, no knock on VDOT, but they didn't clear any of these. They blocked a lot of streets in. So we spent a lot of energy opening the streets up, getting rid of those big piles so that people, even though the roads were still icy, could actually get out of their neighborhoods because we were seeing residents having trouble getting through, 2-foot pile of ice essentially. So we spent that. So that's where we spent a lot of our time. If you kind of go into I'll say we tried clearing some subdivision streets. So even with our heavy equipment, what we were finding out is that it was taking multiple hours to go really short distances on streets, even with the heavy equipment, once everything really froze solid. And we tried throwing some salt down, and we weren't seeing any melting activity because the temperatures were too low. And generally speaking, the surface temps have to be higher than 20 for the salt to work. We have magnesium chloride, which actually works at a lower temperature, but we were only seeing temporary freezing and the ice was just so thick we weren't able to get. And keep in mind this, we also had a storm that ended up going to North Carolina. We were looking at that, so we had to keep an eye on that storm as well. And there's a national salt shortage, so we have four full salt domes, and we have our sand, but we were pretty much. We had what we had. We couldn't use everything and expect another shipment because everyone in the Northeast was trying to get shipments. So we wanted to make sure that we were good for the next storm as well. And anyways, once that storm passed, or it didn't come, it went down to North Carolina. That's when we immediately, that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we moved towards a 50-50 sand salt mix in all the neighborhoods and wanted to take advantage of some of the warmer temperatures. And we got a lot of good results with that, especially on the neighborhood streets that had more traffic. We saw a lot more melting because essentially the traffic mixed with the salt, the sand, and in some instances, the sun, we were seeing a lot of melting. So there were some streets that didn't respond as well. They had less traffic, less sun. There were a few streets that were missed in the process. And, I apologize for that. But when we got those calls, we were able to try to get crews out there. And essentially what ended up happening there, because a lot of our equipment, as Mr. Rogish mentioned, was down, we had to take folks out of their normal assigned areas and bring them into new areas. So, to cover more of the areas. But overall, like I said, we were able to pretty much hit most of the subdivision streets to take advantage of the warmer temperatures where the salt actually was effective. And then we did, in some instances, we pushed some streets and did some things. And then that's essentially how we kind of got through our response. So, but yeah, appreciate everybody's patience. We did get a lot of phone calls through the event. I think I forgot how many days. I think we had multiple people who worked 25 plus days straight, 12-hour shifts. So, I'll give a shout out to my public works team. We had a lot of dedicated employees. And we've got some folks that have been with our department for a long time, 40+ year employees, and they're like, yeah, we've never seen anything like this from an ICE standpoint. And we'll be doing some meetings, with schools. I think we're going to see if there's some things we can do to kind of figure out how to get schools back going quicker by working together. And then internally, we did use technology. We had some good visibility. There's some things we're going to work through with our contractors, for example, to improve our communication. But for the most part, people ask, what would we do different? And we really threw everything at it at the storm. Yeah, there's some things we could do better, but yeah, overall, we were pretty dedicated to the event. So with that, I don't know if you want me to take questions or.
Thank you for everything you guys did. You got a round of applause, and it was very challenging. And so I appreciate everybody's patience too as we work through that. So a couple questions for Public Works.
Of Dominion, and they're installing big cables underground in people's front yard. What is that?
Yeah, that's probably the Dominion's. They have a strategic underground project that they're working on. I think a lot of areas in Tuckahoe, it's not our project, but it's Dominion's. But they have a lot of areas where they have repeated power outage calls. Dominion's going in and undergrounding a lot of those lines. So I think that's what that project is. Yep. In the back, far back.
Is that the intersections that they're limited, the intersections that do have a push button for me to walk and they do have a walk sign as for pedestrians, is that some of those have been blocked. Last year, I had to advise Public Works, actually numerous times before something was corrected. At the corner of Starling and Quioccasin, they put bike lanes along a limited amount of Starling. But when they did that, they installed a sign for the bike lane and put it right in front of the pedestrian walk sign. So the cars that were in the lanes couldn't see that I had the right of way. And so people were, either not letting me go, or when I tried to cross anyway, were honking at me when they didn't see that one day there was a man out there and I pointed that out to him, and it still took months for that to get corrected. So I'm just wanting, next time y'all are installing bike lanes, and I know this is something that you're going to be doing around the county, you need to be aware that that sign needs to be not blocking the pedestrian sign. And the other thing is that because I take buses, there were no bus stops that weren't blocked by that snow and ice, because that was totally ignored. I had to literally stand on the road to catch the bus because these piles were too tall for me to climb up. So that's all I want to say.
All right, noted. Yep. Yeah.
Walks in a lot of neighborhoods. I think it really adds to neighborhoods, but I know this was an unusual snow event, ice event, but I was wondering if you had informed people who's responsible for cleaning the sidewalks. I realized that no human being could get through 4 inches of ice without a jackhammer, but in general, do you inform people when you put a sidewalk in as to who is responsible for clearing snow?
Yeah, so I don't believe I know the city, they have an ordinance that requires the property owners. I don't believe Henrico has an ordinance that requires that. So technically it would be on us, I guess, Public Works. And I know we didn't do that, but yeah, no.
Oh, what's the progress on putting a sidewalk between Ridge Road up to around Forest up to University?
At Ridge Road. Might have to catch up with you afterwards. I'll get you an update on that. Yep.
I think you guys did a great job clearing the main roads, but the kids were still out for 2 weeks and that was painful. So again, I can't stress enough the coordination between Henrico County and the school districts, and maybe reevaluating what roads are critical. Cause I think that became very apparent of like not all residential roads are as valuable. So just keep that in mind. And then the second just comment, I live right off Ridge Road. I love my bike lanes, but the green lines that indicate that there's a bike lane, like your subcontractor, like, do they not have a warranty? It's like peeling and it looks terrible and it's less than 2 years old.
Yeah, so, I mean, that project is, we're using the green paint as kind of a pilot. So we're kind of figuring, I mean, it was new. So we're trying to figure out what's going to last and what isn't going to last. So
It's not lasting.
yeah. So, no, I understand that. So, I mean, one of the big things is, it's a material called thermoplastic, not paint. So the thermoplastic, one of the advantages of it is it's reflective at night. You can see it at night. The downside of it is it doesn't adhere to the road as well. So those are some things that we're working on. If you look at any of our pedestrian safety or bike projects, you'll see maybe a few different products because we're trying to figure out what's going to stand the test of time, because every product has what the manufacturer says and then there's the real world. So, so we're aware and we'll address. And as far as your other question with schools, so I mean, they have I think one of the issues, well, not issues, but there's a lot of roads in the county. Had this not been ice, we actually were going to be in subdivision streets that Tuesday and Wednesday. So like if this was snow, not ice, I think schools probably could have been open on Monday or on at least by Monday, but maybe Thursday or Friday, because we literally hit a wall with the ice. That's one of the challenges, but there's a lot of things that we're going to discuss with schools. But there's a lot of roads that, are in subdivisions that aren't necessarily within our primary, secondary that we can get within one day, for example. So we'll keep coordinating with them. Now, I don't know if
One is that you said the sand and the salt don't really work until it's a certain temperature. Well, the end of our road's never treated. At the end of our road, where it meets a road that was treated, it was slushy because the cars coming off of the treated road onto our road were tracking that sand and salt onto our road. So it does work. So it seems like you could sand and salt the roads and then go back to plowing. I had an email exchange with you.
Yeah. So what I was saying is under 20 degrees. So we had some nights that were in the single digits, 10.
Days were.
In some cases, we were seeing some areas where the salt was melting in and essentially was refreezing. So we wanted to make sure, like I said, because of some of the other events, and we went through almost four domes of salt, which we have 4 domes of salt. So we wanted to make sure that when we were using the salt, it was at its most effective point.
But it was working at the end of the road through the whole event. So I think it might work better than you're aware of because the ends of the roads were flushy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this, if just being realistic, if we had an unlimited supply of salt, I think that makes sense. So, I mean, that's some of the things we're trying to manage though, is we're looking at multiple events. I mean, we've been very fortunate. I don't know if you guys have been following the weather, but like we were very fortunate to miss what happened in North Carolina. And honestly, had that system formed a little bit further south, we were very fortunate. So we missed two events that could have easily impacted the Richmond region. So those are all the things that we're trying to factor in is to make sure that we can respond.
Well, as soon as you finally did get to our road, it melted immediately. The other thing is there was a tree in our neighborhood that had been marked for removal by the county. It's been there for about a year. The property owners where that tree was, they'd been calling Henrico every month to get the thing finally removed. Another neighbor would be calling occasionally. I called twice. I finally wrote to Mr. Rogish about it, and he contacted Joseph Madison. Joseph Madison said he'd never heard of it, not once. The next day, I think he went out and looked at it. He called me back. He goes, "We'll get it handled." So what's with that?
Yeah, I don't know the history behind it, but I do know that the tree is scheduled to come down. So, I mean, with Mr. Madison. So I apologize for I don't know the history. I don't honestly. So.
Yeah, well, somebody's not communicating. Who answers the phone?
Yeah. So let me do this, folks. First of all, Mr. Hughes, thank you so much. Appreciate all you've done. Thank you very much. Folks, I just want to give a few more minutes for those that maybe we haven't heard from that might have an issue they want to talk about. Some people are already leaving. That's fine. It's 2:30. I know we will do this again in a few months, but are there any, I have another 10 slides that I had, to put out there, but all great questions, and thank you for the speakers that presented. Are there any questions from folks that maybe we haven't heard from that really have a dying question to ask me? Not one. Yes, sir. The land next to the Tuckahoe YMCA, the Mayberry and Patterson piece of property, 6 acres. No, but we do have, I did talk to Recreation and Parks about a week ago, and we will have another meeting in the late spring on that. So he will have some preliminary designs. We had one community meeting over at Mayberry Elementary on that park. He will be bringing back some preliminary designs. We're not honestly in a huge hurry on it. It wasn't a priority. It kind of came up, and we did purchase it, but probably late spring, early summer, look for a meeting invitation on that for that park. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Effort.
What's the status on the CSX canal effort? Let me see if I can answer kind of where we are with it. And there was the CSX canal, there's about 65 acres that are down by the CSX canal that was given to Henrico County along the canal and the canal itself. It was originally signed in about November 15th or so, November 15th, 20th, to go through 2 180-day due diligence periods. So we are in the middle of that due diligence right now, the first 180 days of the due diligence. That's the only update that I've gotten, unless Mr. Hughes, you have another update on that. So
Make sure everything's checked.
it's a very unique piece of property, as you're well aware. It dates back to George Washington, and I think actually they found, so they're doing some title search because there are about 65 properties that are on that canal. So they're doing some title search now, and some of that goes back to the late 1700s, early 1800s is what I've been told. So they're doing the title searches now on that. So nothing else on that. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rogish, are you familiar with the Dillon rule?
I am. Yeah. Good question. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? That's it? Well, I want to just say thank you to everybody for coming out. This is part of the process. Folks, I am an easy person to find. Tuckahoe@henrico.gov. If you have any questions, my business card is back there. My personal cell's out there on my card. Please use it sparingly. But no, seriously, if you have questions, please reach out to me, okay?